I've lived in Riverside Estates for 15 years, and I know this neighborhood floods. When the Weather Service issued a severe flood warning for our area, I immediately started preparing. I spent all afternoon placing sandbags around my property's vulnerable points, the garage entrance, front door, and the slope where water always pools. My neighbor Karen, the self-appointed HOA enforcer, watched from her window the entire time, arms crossed, lips pursed in that familiar disapproving frown. Around 6 p.m., Karen marched over with a printed copy of the HOA bylaws, highlighting Section 432 about unauthorized modifications to property exteriors. She demanded I remove the sandbags immediately, claiming they were an eyesore and violated the neighborhood's aesthetic standards. I explained about the flood warning, showed her the emergency alert on my phone, but she wouldn't budge. "Rules are rules," she said, threatening to fine me $500 per day if the sandbags weren't gone by morning. I stood my ground, but she smirked and said, "We'll see about that." I woke up at 2 a.m. to strange noises outside. Through my bedroom window, I watched in disbelief as Karen directed her teenage son and his friend to remove my sandbags, loading them into a wheelbarrow. I rushed outside in my pajamas, but Karen held up her phone, recording me. "One more step and I'm calling the police for harassment," she warned. She claimed that as HOA board member, she had emergency authority to remove covenant violations. I filmed her taking the sandbags too, knowing this wouldn't end well with the storm approaching. By 4 a.m., the rain was torrential. I watched from my second-floor window as water started rising in the street. Without my sandbags, water began seeping under my garage door. I moved my car to higher ground earlier, but I was frantically moving everything I could upstairs. Meanwhile, I noticed Karen's prized possession, her limited edition McLaren P1, one of only 375 made, still parked in her driveway, which sat lower than mine. She'd always bragged about that car, how it cost more than most people's houses. By 5:30 a.m., the flooding was severe. My garage had 6 inches of water and I was dealing with damage I could have prevented. But Karen's situation was becoming critical. Her driveway was completely submerged, and water was halfway up her McLaren's wheels. I saw her husband frantically trying to start the car, but water had already gotten into the exhaust. Karen was on her phone, probably calling for help, but emergency services were overwhelmed. The irony wasn't lost on me. The sandbags she'd removed from my property could have saved her million-dollar investment. When the waters receded that afternoon, the devastation was clear. My garage had moderate damage, maybe $10,000 worth. But Karen's McLaren was destroyed. Water had gotten into the engine, the custom leather interior was ruined, and the electronics were completely fried. The insurance adjuster who came by told her that flood damage wasn't covered under her policy since she hadn't purchased supplemental flood insurance. "Who doesn't get flood insurance for $1 million car in a flood zone?" I heard him mutter. Karen just stood there, pale and speechless. At the emergency HOA meeting that week, the community was divided. Half the neighbors had witnessed Karen removing my sandbags and were furious that her power trip had prevented legitimate flood preparation. Others who'd suffered damage demanded to know why the HOA had interfered with emergency preparations. I presented my video evidence, and several neighbors testified they'd seen Karen's midnight removal operation. The board voted to immediately amend the bylaws to allow emergency weather preparations and, more importantly, voted Karen off the board. She sat in the back, no longer the confident rule enforcer, just a woman who'd lost her prized possession to her own pettiness. Karen and her family moved out 3 months later. The financial hit from the McLaren, combined with the social ostracism from neighbors who'd also suffered preventable flood damage, made staying impossible. I heard from the realtor that she took a huge loss on the house sale too, desperate to leave quickly. The new HOA board instituted a common-sense clause that allows homeowners to take emergency protective measures regardless of aesthetic concerns. Sometimes I drive past Karen's old house, now owned by a lovely young family, and see the sandbags I keep permanently stored in my garage, just in case. The new neighbors always wave and smile, and nobody ever complains about flood preparations anymore. Every HOA has a story on HOA headaches. You'll hear the ones they tried to bury. Subscribe today.